Hello, my name is Simon Miller. Welcome to Raw Ups and Downs, and we are going to talk about it later, but I just need to express my frustrations that after an excellent angle with Mustafa Ali last week when he was the leader of Retribution, what payoff did we get 7 days later? Nothing. Nada. Jack Shib, no BS. We didn't even get like a video going, I'm Ali, I'm in charge of Retribution. I would have made that for you, WWE. I could have done it using my basic editing skills. But whatever, it is the second night of the draft, so there's loads of other stuff we do need to talk about, and we also need to prep ourselves for Retro Ups and Downs. So head on over to the YouTube community page right now over here on WhatCulture Wrestling, and your 4 choices are this, voted by you. We have Survivor Series 2002, the first ever Elimination Chamber match. We have the highest rating Nitro ever, which I think was Hogan and Bret Hart taking on Luger and Sting. I don't know, you wanted it. Raw 1000, that old chestnut from back in the day. And Backlash 2000, which of course saw Triple H take on The Rock. So go and vote now, but otherwise take your own finger of powers and let's up those downs. Randy Orton was out to start Raw, and this does seem to have happened a lot recently. Like as soon as I heard, I hear voices in my head, my heart sank just a little bit, because I was like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, just living the same thing over and over again, just with less killing. He was super proud that he had pinned Drew McIntyre last week because it did mean the WWE Champion had suffered his first pinfall loss since Survivor Series 2019, and never forget, that does justify them having a Hell in a Cell match. Well, no, it justifies them having a match at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Why it's in that structure, I have absolutely no idea. Of course, Drew came out before long, and his point was, while at Clash of Champions, he was fighting for all the legends that Randy Orton had done away with at the pay-per-view. This time, he'll be fighting for himself. Which one seems very unfortunate, given that, Randy Orton did once again try and murder the Big Show, Christian, Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. But also, 2, I don't remember McIntyre ever say he was fighting for those guys. It kind of feels like he picked this out his ass. McIntyre was all wound up though, so he did start to whip Orton's ass before he was able to get out of there. And I don't know, I just feel like we took this feud and we spent an extra month doing something with it, when really we should have just left it in the dust. They're still 2 great performers, but I'm not really as invested as I was. Down. It was then draft time, and you already know my thoughts. I don't get why WWE isn't having more fun with this. Like Stephanie McMahon just comes out and goes, here are the names, Raw, SmackDown, bleep, bleep, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, that was a waste of my time. However, we did get our first draw for the night, and Bray Wyatt the Fiend is going to Monday nights. Was quite good, oodalally. Bayley is also staying on SmackDown. Orton is going to Raw. Obviously, the Street Profits are going to SmackDown because they're the tag team champions on Raw. And New Day are the other tag team champions. We'll talk about it in a bit. And Charlotte apparently is staying on Raw. But hands up, if you had no clue what her official brand was, because I'm pretty sure before she got injured, she was just on everything. Major takeaway is that Raw did need some extra star power, and I like this idea of Bray jumping ship. I'm intrigued to see what he's going to do, so that can have it up. WWE then booked a no disqualification match, and I can only imagine the carnage that was happening backstage as people running around going, wait a minute, it's an ODQ match? Well, what the hell do we have to do to end the thing? And then somebody explained what a clean finish was. I am such a dick. But up. It was Kevin Owens versus Aleister Black, and this was mainly being done because one of these dudes was going to be moved to SmackDown later, so WWE thought, well, we can't insult our fans, we have to make sure we tie this up. If you bought that, you're an idiot. Once again, later on in the show. The stipulation did help though, because these two absolutely beat the holy shit out of each other. Like, you wouldn't have thought this was a random episode of Raw. You would have thought this was them fighting to get a contract in WWE in the first place. And even though we saw stairs and tables and ladders and who knows what else, the thing that made me wince the most is when Aleister went for Black Mass, missed, and his leg just careered against the ring post. I was like, oh, that has to hurt. It allowed Kevin to get him back in the ring and give him a powerbomb through some wood to get the 1, 2, 3. And at this venture, I was like, awesome. Maybe we can finally lay this to bed. I mean, it hasn't been the best feud in the world and don't really understand the logic behind it. But no, what WWE has decided to do is just take all the stories they have on Raw and put them on SmackDown, and all the stories they have on SmackDown and put them on Raw. Whatever. We then had our second draft picks for the night. The one that WWE tried to sell the most was that Braun Strowman is going to Raw. And I actually did facepalm. And I facepalmed so hard, my hand was glued to my head for a prolonged period of time. Because if they knew they were going to do this, why did we have the monster among men who has serious anger management problems just screams all the time? Why did he come to Raw for the last 2-3 weeks or whatever it was? This would have had so much more impact if he hadn't have done that. And also now it's just confusing because he's fighting Roman Reigns on SmackDown for the Universal title. Honestly, it's like they just put their hand into a hat and it's full of bits of paper and they just read things and go, that can be the story and this can be the feuds. Anyway, the point is getting it down. There's more too as Matt Riddle is also coming to Raw. That made my eyebrow go up. Whereas Daniel Bryan is staying on SmackDown. And then we had another big switch because yes, Kevin Owens is going to Fridays, but coming to Mondays is none other than Jeff Hardy. I do quite like this, to be honest. I mean, originally it was because I was excited about Kevin Owens having some fresh feuds, but spoiler, Aleister Black is going to jump ship later as well. But look, it has been long enough now between the whole Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn breakup thing. If you want to put them back together as a team or have them fight each other, I'm all right with it. Also, I have no idea what the plan for Matt Riddle is, but all of this made sense to me. Up. The Miz and John Morrison were then interviewing Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke on Miz TV. I don't know either. They laughed at the New Day and Heavy Machinery because you got broken up in the draft, whereas these two did not. And then when Mandy was out here, she was all mad at The Miz for separating her from Otis. Now we know about new life laws when it comes to being a WWE superstar. You can only be in a relationship if you're on the same brand. Otherwise, you got to break up. Miz tried to wind everybody up by saying that Dana Brooke had made a terrible decision because look what happened to Sonya Deville when she teamed with Mandy Rose. But these two are like, yeah, we don't care what you're saying, Miz. And then he tried again with the Battle Royal that's going to main event Raw later. But again, they were like, look, that's every woman's for themselves. But afterwards, we are still going to be the best of friends. I love it. This went on forever though, as did the interruption by Lana and Natalya. Like why they would even be able to do this, I don't know, given they lost in consecutive weeks. But eventually someone said something too bad. I think it was about TikTok. And Mandy Rose, Dana Brooke, Lana and Natty, they all started to brawl. And if you were wondering, well, what was all this leading towards? It was what was due to come next, because John Morrison then joked that he was the backup guest, and he was actually better than the guest who they were meant to have, when of course, they were interrupted by Lars Sullivan. He stole my gimmick by slapping his head on the way out, so flub that guy. And also, I'm just done with him. If you know all the stuff that's been going on this week away from the squared circle, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I'm not going to put that on your shoulders because it's not fair. But I don't get him. I don't understand why he's getting such a major push. I have no real emotional connection with him, to the point now, every time I do see him, I'm just gonna give him a down. Therefore, he's getting it down. And yes, he killed John Morrison because he wasn't able to kill John Morrison on SmackDown. This is not for me. Also, just on a side note, if you did say to me, Simon, who would you rather see pushed? It would be John Morrison. So there's that. We then had a backstage segment with Adam Pearce when he told the New Day and the Street Profits because they've now switched brands, they also need to switch the championship belts. I mean, this was absolutely ridiculous. Just merge the championships, for goodness sake, WWE. You don't have enough tag teams anyway. Rudolph, that being Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler, then turned up and demanded a match against the New Day because why the hell not? I think they beat them at some point in the past, but I can never keep up to date with this. And it would just be so much better if the men's tag team belts were like the women's tag team belts. It'd just be so much more depth, you have so much more fun, but it's never going to happen. The dumbest thing ever, at least when it comes to the draft, then happened on Raw. Why? Because Retribution got drafted to the show. Why would anybody in charge of this go, you know that group that said they've turned up at WWE to just try and destroy the wrestlers and try and destroy the buildings and try and destroy our company and try and run us into the ground? Why don't we put them on our program just to see what's gonna happen? It's so hard sometimes. It's so hard. You cannot justify that. However, I went out there and I found exclusive footage that shows how this went about. I'm going to reveal it to you now. It was under very heavy NDA, but I managed to get them to agree to it. So sit down, brace yourselves, roll it.
Now, given all the madness going on in the world at the moment, Vince McMahon has decided that I should come up with a plan for Monday Night Raw. And I'm very worried about this because one, it's my first day, but also two, I am just a penguin. I have absolutely no idea what to do when it comes to professional wrestling, and therefore I've decided I'll just keep Retribution off the show, because you don't know, I don't want to get fired or yelled at by the boss. makes sense to me.
Actually makes more sense, doesn't it, than what WWE told us. But yes, Raw have drafted Retribution, once again a group who is now going to try and burn everybody into their graves. Down. Lars Sullivan is on SmackDown, so I got confused last week because I swear they said he was going to Raw, but what the hell do I know? And Baron Corbin is staying there too, whereas Raw is getting Keith Lee and Alexa Bliss. And thank goodness for that last one, because if we had moved the Fiend and we hadn't moved her, I would have just had to run through the wall to get out my adrenaline. Still, all of these made sense. When things make sense, you can have it up. And then what happened next was wonderful. Seth Rollins was out to say goodbye to Raw, and I just zoomed through this to get to the good bits, because he got interrupted by Jeff Hardy, who's basically like, buzz off Seth, you're not here anymore, and he got interrupted by AJ Styles, who said the same thing, and also accused Jeff Hardy of being an alcoholic. We don't need to get into it. But what it did mean is that we were about to set up a triple threat match, and I was filled with a tremendous amount of excitement. It was also kind of hilarious because it fell to Jeff to arrange this match, and he said, well, why don't we have a triple threat tag team match? That poor guy. I mean, he has been in tag teams for so much of his life, his brain was just defaulting here, but my word did I laugh. In the confusion. This was just awesome too. I mean, much like the triple threats we have had on SmackDown with Sami Zayn taking the role of Seth Rollins, these three are just such good workers. Like at one point, Jeff Hardy just jumped off of Seth Rollins' back. That ain't a normal thing you see in normal life. I didn't even mind the shenanigans at the end because not only was it a surprise, but it was one that tied into the story, because just as it seemed like Jeff Hardy was about to get the win, he was whipping AJ Styles' ass. Elias, you remember him, Elias, came from nowhere, smashed him with a guitar, down he went, the referee can't do anything because there is no DQs in a triple threat. Styles was like, well, I'll take that. He crawled over, he got the pinfall, and now I guess you can do something with all of this. So this really was top stuff all round. Sometimes I think we forget that WWE does have some damn good wrestlers in it. By the end of it, I just felt full of cheese. If you don't know when I feel full of cheese, that means I'm joyful. In true WWE fashion as well, Elias was then drafted to Raw. Like the executives at the USA Network had said, look, Elias, here's what we're going to do. We're going to draft you at this time, so if beforehand you can make your big return, that would work out very well for us. So we did. Sami Zayn is also staying on Friday nights, as is Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura, whereas Raw is going to get Sheamus and Lacey Evans, if Lacey is ever actually allowed to return to television. I mean, she does later, but at this point, it was anybody's guess. It is some good shifts, though. Sheamus did need a new home, so once again, it's an up. Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke then beat Lana and Natalya again. I mean, sheesh. Remember that stuff we talked about, Groundhog Day, Bill Murray? We don't want to be there. Down. Lana got pinned here again, too, and it pissed Natty off so much, she just looked at her and went like, you're a piece of trash. I don't want to do this anymore. She left, and I think that tag team has broken up. And what is it with WWE and just all their relationships going through the floor? They probably need to get a marriage counselor in there or something. I mean, that is the true mystery of 2020 WWE. Not evolution. It's like, what is in the water? Everybody need to stop drinking it. Ricochet then came up with the most bizarre stipulation of all time, because he went up to the Hurt Business and said, look, I am done fighting, so let's have one last fight. Good one. Point is, if he does win, they have to agree to leave him alone, but if they beat him, he will finally join the Hurt Business. I'm not even sure if MVP wanted this, but the stakes have been made, and later on we are getting Cedric Alexander versus Ricochet. We then finally, after all these months and all this time, got our big payoff between Angel Garza and Andrade. You know, they've been fighting and they've been falling out, and they've been going after tag team championships, and they weren't able to make it. So what we received is a 2-minute match. A 2-minute match. I have gone to the toilet sometimes and it's lasted longer than 2 minutes. I could not believe it. Is getting it down. Now what I do want to say is that these two guys gave every single last thing they had, and despite only having 120 seconds, they did kind of make it entertaining, so in that sense, they can have an up. And I suppose that Angel Garza is our project because he won after the wing clipper here, and not only did Andrade get defeated, but as of me saying these words, he still hasn't been drafted to either show. Zelina Vega was on commentary throughout all of this, basically saying, I don't want to be their mum anymore, I hate my kids, they drive me absolutely wild. And then at one point, she just mentioned Alexa Bliss. And that kind of seemed out of nowhere, but But little did I know. Because as soon as we were done and Zelina Vega had gone to tend on Andrade just to make sure he hadn't, like, I don't know, grazed his elbow or something, the lights went out, and when they came back on, Alexa Bliss was in the ring, but she was doing Bray Wyatt's crab pose. You know the one when he goes like this, and it's like, oh, my back. Although they don't make that kind of noises because somehow their joints and muscles are just so supple. Her new love then also appeared in the ring though, and using some of the best timing I have ever seen in my damn life, they hit Andrade and Zelina Vega with twin sister Abigail's, and honestly, it was so well synced up, it made me feel very satisfied. Now, I thought at first that this was going to be our new feud, but Zelina Vega's been drafted to SmackDown, and Andrade's just flapping around the place, so who the hell knows? But honestly, as silly as everything with Alexa Bliss and The Fiend is, they really are pulling it off very well, and I like everything they do, and it's getting it up. Nikki Cross is also going to Raw, which is good because surely at some point she has to be inserted into this. And also, where the hell has she gone? Nobody has told me, and R-Truth will also be staying on Monday nights, because you can't have an episode of Raw without the 24/7 title now, can you? Dabba Kato is also going to be going to Raw. That reminded me, well, where the hell has Raw Underground gone? Nobody's talking about that. And Rudolph, that being Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode, as well as Apollo Crews, are going to SmackDown. So where Apollo is concerned, he's now just like a tennis ball, goes back and forth between brand to brand. But then just had a nice match. It was Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler taking on the New Day, maybe for the titles, maybe for it wasn't, who the hell knows. And my only problem with it is like, why couldn't we have done this match and then put the draft afterwards? Because as soon as you told me that Rudolph were going to Fridays, I knew they were going to lose. But whatever, take that, throw it away. Again, just so comfortable, just so nice. Give it up. So it's a bit like going to your grandmother's house, which you always know is going to be a lovely experience, and there's not really much I can tell here. Eventually the New Day hit the midnight hour, they got the 1, 2, 3. I'm really happy to see Bobby Roode, Xavier and Kofi Kingston back. I just love all of those guys, and yeah, I would take more of this on Raw. Elias was then being interviewed and talked about an angle that had happened 495 years ago. I mean, he wasn't. He was referencing that time that Jeff Hardy and Sheamus and himself were involved in that big car crash, but WWE never calls back to stuff like this, so I shall give them a round of applause. I mean, that's nonsense, but they're getting it anyway. Elias said that he knows it was Jeff Hardy, which is why he's now targeting him, but even Charlie Caruso was like, wait, no, that's not the case. In fact, we don't know who was responsible for all of that, and I was like, oh my gosh, we don't. WWE just left that nugget, but either way, we're gonna get the Jeff Hardy-Elias feud, and to celebrate, not only does Elias have a new album coming out, but next week on Raw, he's gonna do a concert. It's gonna be weird, concert to like digital screens, but that's just the year we're living in. Okay, right, Cedric Alexander versus Ricochet. Now, WWE has to stop doing DQ finishes, but only because when they do something like this, it will mean all the more. It is getting it up. Towards the end, the referee was on the floor and I'm like, oh, my head. So MVP threw a chair in the ring, hoping to get it to his man, but unfortunately he missed and Ricochet got it instead. But our hero, realizing he was in a precarious position, given that the Hurt Business got up to the apron, took the chair, smashed it into the floor, threw it towards Cedric Alexander, and then took one of the most hilarious pratfalls I have seen in ages, a la Eddie Guerrero, meaning when the referee turned around, Cedric got disqualified, Ricochet won, he no longer has to deal with the Hurt Business. And of course this makes no sense because the referee didn't see it, but I don't care. It was so entertaining, it was so well executed. Give me more of this in my life. I really hope that is the end of this as well, because you know WWE, they will say things sometimes and actually then go back on their word. And for the people out there going, Ricochet should have just won, no way, man. This made me love that character far more than a pinfall or the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. It was absolutely faboo and it was on the money. Do more of this with Ricochet, it makes him so damn lovable. It was in our final part of the draft and we were told that Titus O'Neil is staying on Raw. And I was like, well, that's really good, because since the last one, he's had a grand total of 2 matches. I wouldn't want to miss out on another. Peyton Royce will also be joining him, as well as Tozawa, because again, you know, we have to have 24/7 title matches all the time. Although I did like this. When we had Tozawa's graphic, it said, leader of a Ninja Foot Clan. I did laugh. Carmella will also be untouchable on SmackDown, as well Aleister Black. What did I tell you earlier? What did I tell you? We are just taking chess pieces and we're moving them from phase 1 to phase 2. I don't understand why we did this. It would have been so much better to have kept Aleister Black on Raw, teamed him up with Alexa Bliss and The Fiend or something, done something really cool, and Kevin Owens could have done other things. But no, instead, we're just gonna run this into the ground. Down. It was in time for our main event, which was the Women's Battle Royal, with the winner getting a shot at Asuka next week for that championship. And I'll tell you this, I did not see this coming. like Rey Mysterio. Everybody worked over Nia Jax because she had been a right ass beforehand on a microphone, and you know, she's a giant, and how do you get a giant out of a battle royal? Well, it's nice and simple. Everybody went to chuck her over the top rope, with the last person helping being Shayna Baszler, and Shayna was all like, shrug emoji, because you know, those two have a love-hate relationship. I don't really care. Nia was so mad about this though, she did grab Lana and throw her through a table for the 4th week in a row. And I'm still very worried that this may be in bad taste. Look, it's one of those jokes that because you kept doing it over and over, it was quite funny. We cut to Drew and Orton halfway through this as if somebody writing the show had gone, oh man, we promised we were going to do that and we didn't, so they were just brawling backstage. And Tom Phillips was really confusing because he was like, oh, Drew McIntyre's got the better of Randy Orton, as Randy Orton was just punching him in the face, so who knows what that was. And eventually the final 4 were Lacey Evans, Natalya, Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. After some crazy ruckus between Lacey and Natty, when Natalya grabbed the Southern Belle and just clonked her right into the ring post, Natalya thought she had won, but of course, much like Brock Lesnar from the Royal Rumble in 2016, Lana then appeared from her wooden wreckage and she chucked out her former tag team partner, which meant 1, she got her revenge in like an hour on the same show, but also 2, WWE had attempted to do a surprise. I mean, the commentators were going, oh, we forgot about Lana, and I was like, I didn't forget about Lana. When Natalya was stood there with a smile on her face, I literally said out loud, well, she's about to get thrown out by Lana. And she did. That doesn't mean that it is going to be Lana versus Asuka next week, and you can make of that what you will. Again, that's the last match I thought we were going to see. And very kindly, it was here when Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre spilled out fighting, because, you know, they waited for this match to be over. They're very thoughtful human beings. That's how Raw went off air as well, with everybody trying to separate them and pull them apart. And I will say, a lot of this was quite messy, but it was also quite dumb. I thought it was quite fun. I didn't mind the surprise victor, even though there would have been better choices. It can have an up. Which brings us to the end of the draft, and I will say I do like some of the moves. Like the Fiend on Raw I think is good, and Kevin Owens on SmackDown I think that's pretty decent too. But why did we just... It's like one of those machines you play, like the toy machines with the big crane hand. We've just gone... and we've taken stories and we've dropped them over there, whereas I was quite excited about there being narratives, especially because next week is the season premiere of Raw and SmackDown. We kept getting told that the whole night, and yet... nothing's going to change. Even though still, overall, I'll give it up because I was sports entertained. And as we know, I'm very easily sports entertained. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about Raw and the draft in general. Like the video, share the video and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to vote in the Retro Ups and Downs poll, and I will see you throughout the week.